welcome to another episode of A Blind Insight with me, Simon Hill, Britain.Simon, and Shona. I should ask your surname, Shona. I haven't, have I? But,
It's a long one. It's Gilson, and it's we just stick with the first name, I think.
Fair enough.
That's good.
But picking up from, I'm glad you're here actually because it gives a bit of continuity. Seems we're going to be sort of continuing from the last episode with Hilly and Billy's Britain. But first of all, I think we've got to talk about the football. So
Over to you, Billy.
We'll bore Shona for the first few minutes, but a lot's happened, hasn't it? Like there's been because we hadn't even played Slovakia last time we were here, and obviously we've played 2 games since, and so much has happened. So it's been.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really watched much of it. Basically because I don't like the way, not just England, I don't like the way football's going. There's the odd couple of teams that play like they should play, like try to win a game rather than try not to lose a game. And it just does my head in when it's like you're in an attacking position 2 yards from their 18-yard box, and then they pass it all the way back to the goalkeeper to find another way in. Well, to me, it gives the opposition all the time in the world to regroup and do what they want to do.
Well, all I ever think, I mean, and again, maybe it's different, obviously, being able to see the pitch, the side to burst, but for me, if you're defending, I mean, if the opposition aren't running at you or doing something, that's fine, that's easy, carry on.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know there's all the talk about the press high, win it up the pitch, but then surely, if that's the case, then by doing that, you're just inviting the pressure on. Whereas if you look to, getting, you don't score goals in your own penalty box, do you? That's the thing.
No.
So it's.
No, and all this airy-fairy playing in triangles, it's wonderful and it's very poetic. But you can play in triangles as often as you want and as long as you want, really. If I was a defender, I'd go, this is all right. I ain't got to do any work here. They're just kicking about in triangles. And particularly, I mean, not to be overly critical, but if I was an opposing manager at the moment playing against England, they're playing Foden on the left, and he comes in. Why he's a left-sided player and he comes in on his right foot all the time, I have no idea. And then you force them into the channels where everybody's in a group, and then they've got nowhere to go. And you just think, well, just force him in rather than let him go down the line. We haven't had a runner, really, until Palmer comes on that will actually run at him. It's just really predictable, I think.
It's he
and boring.
Well, I mean, it's all relative, really. I mean, against Switzerland, it was better in terms of the switch to the back three, and then playing. He managed to get both Bellingham and Foden central, so they were both sort of where they wanted to be, and that did seem to work better. But of course, it was still glaringly obvious about the no left footer on the left side issue, which obviously looks well. I think Shaw will start, but we'll see. But he, the difference when he came on late on was immediately obvious. So it's that thing of
I suppose it depends if he can last a match, innit? Because he ain't played for about
it's a big
4
ask.
years or something. No, not 4 years, months. But
yeah.
But he ain't played, so he ain't match fit, is he?
Well,
There's being fit and being match fit. It's two totally different.
It's one
things.
thing coming off the bench and doing you can when you've got and of course it depends. Like I say, that the Netherlands are going to test us defensively, aren't they? They all the teams, maybe Denmark aside, but then they set up to sort of do a defensive job on us as well. And like you say, teams see what we do and they see, okay, well, if we just, let England have the ball, they're not really doing a lot with it, and then we'll pick our moments and break, and that's what Switzerland did, and it was very nearly enough, but
all I can say is the penalties were unbelievable.
Well, that's the
young lads coming up to take penalties with the pressure, particularly Saka, because he got all of the racist abuse last time when he played. So it was incredibly brave. And I read a report. I don't know if did you watch football? Did you watch it? Did you watch the penalties?
I didn't watch that one. No.
Well, Tony, I read a report by a football psychoanalyst as to the way he took the penalty. This bloke, come on, and he walks from the halfway line and just takes ages and ages and ages to walk there. Then he puts the ball down. Then he just stands there, which seems like an eternity, but it was actually 7.6 seconds. And all the time he's standing there, he doesn't look at the ball. He just looks directly at the goalkeeper. Then he takes the penalty without looking where he's going to kick it. Goes right in the corner. And apparently that's the way he always takes his penalties. And this analyst, this like football analyst, said he traced it back to his Peterborough years, and he's always done it the same. And it's a way of the psychological battlefield between him and the goalkeeper, and he's now leaving it longer, so the goalkeeper gets incredibly tense, thinking, well, what's he going to do? And all the time, he's not looking at the ball; he's looking directly into the goalkeeper's eyes. Yeah. So it's almost like two gunmen waiting to shoot, and he's thinking, well, I ain't going to move until you move. And when you move, I'm going to put it where I want to put it. So I ain't going to take my eyes off you. Absolutely fascinating, this article was, when you think about it.
So, when they normally take penalties then, so would they, be there, eyeing up the goal, and then know where they want to put it, but then pretend they're going to put it somewhere else and look somewhere else to try and
it's funny any time, because sometimes they cock it up, don't they? And they try to be clever, and then they miss or...
I always think back to, it would have been the last penalty shootout for England in the final, where Rashford, he did that ridiculously long run up, a hop and a jump or whatever, then missed. You just think, well, what was that all about?
You get some of them when they start the run up, and then they do like 5 seconds running on the spot, whatever that is. And then I got the 5 young kids, because Kane went off our penalty taker. I was told that Foden asked to be taken off because he wasn't confident of scoring on a penalty.
Oh, right, I haven't heard that.
Yeah, somebody told me who went to the game. And but they put the young lads on, Palmer, who'd just come on from Chelsea, great penalty taker. Saka took his penalty, Tony took his penalty, can't think the other one, the young lad.
Trent Alexander-Arnold took the last one.
The last one, and that was just phenomenal.
And Bellingham took the other one. Yeah.
Bellingham, that's it. And he's been ribbed all tournament, Trent Alexander-Arnold, for being played in the wrong position, and he's not this and he's not doing this. And to give him the responsibility to take the winning penalty, and he just put it away as though it was like on the Parks pitches. It was absolutely incredible.
But it was obviously, I presume you talk about, it was Ivan Toney who they went, he didn't even look at the ball. And all
he didn't look at the ball.
Alan Shearer and Gary Lineker were all there going, how has he done that?
This is how has he done that?
Yeah.
But you've got to look where you're going to put it, and he never did. Never took his eyes off the goalie. It's fascinating to watch.
Yeah. But Saka was, it was Stuart Pearce over again, wasn't it? Missed in 1990 and then took one in 96 and Euro 96. So it was, the same saga of that all over again. So, credit to him. It's his. It can't have been easy stepping up to do it, and
it was awful the last time. There was 3 coloured lads who missed penalties at was it the Euros or
It's the last Euros, weren't the
last final? Euros, and the racist abuse they took was just absolutely unbelievable. And they were only young kids then, weren't they?
Yeah. Well,
this is like 4 years ago.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
I can't believe all that's still going on.
Oh, it's awful.
It's just easy. It's just, it doesn't take any intelligence or any. It's just they want to have a pop, and that's that's the easiest way to do it. But it's.
But I don't know if football crowds are changing as well, because the guy from France has took a lot of stick, the manager, into this time for the way they've played.
Well, they haven't played well, have they?
They haven't played well, but the amount of abuse that Southgate's had to take. Oh, he's doing this wrong, and he's doing, in all fairness to him, all he says is, look, I do this for the players. This is what I do for the players. And we know we're going to take abuse, but this has just gone beyond a joke this time. It's just been awful.
I think football fans are like, everybody thinks they're a football manager, and that's probably always been the case. But now more than ever, I think, because people probably think, I play football manager on the computer, and so I know what I'm doing. But they forget that, maybe, but you're not dealing with human beings. You know, that there's the man management, there's trying to get the the balance right. And apart from anything else, you've got opposition who know all about you, know your weaknesses, you know, and are doing all they can to stop to nullify your strengths, because it's not like you turn up and you're completely unknown. You know, there's no secrets anymore in football. Everybody knows about you. You know, every player will have, you know, with success comes the issue of notoriety. So, like, you know, everybody knows about Jude Bellingham. So, therefore, every team says, right, you know, we'll put somebody tasked deliberately to stop him impacting the game as much as possible. And it's, you know, so these players, you know, are having to learn, because, like you say, they're only young still. A lot of them, they're having to learn that they can't just do what they want to do. They have to adjust their game to combat what they're going up against. So it's, you know,
and if you come up against a team that sets themselves up not to lose to you, it is really, really difficult, isn't it? You think, well, we're going to, a bit like Spain go out to win every game. So it don't matter who they're playing, it's 100 mile an hour, we're going to score more goals than you. And that's the way they play, and they always play, and it's brilliant to watch. A lot of teams now come on immediately to stop you playing football. And it's like, well, we might get a goal on the break, but you ain't going to score any against us. And it must be awful to play against. You can't play a flowing game at something like that. But, you know, they're professionals. They paid a lot of money. They should. It's all right saying to the man, you know, blaming the manager, but when you're out on that pitch, you're experienced enough to make decisions about how to change the game and how to do things. And a lot of them don't. And what really annoys me is when they say it was a good effort because it was on his wrong foot. I mean, I go on about this all the bloody time. And, you know, you're £250,000 a week. If you can't kick with both bloody feet, you shouldn't be on the football pitch as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, I haven't watched a lot of the games, but it does seem to be like just a bit of time wasting. It's like they're just trying to hold back. And, you know, what is that about? Is it they're just pacing themselves, they're waiting for the right moment? Or like you were saying earlier, Simon, what they're doing is, you know, that are perfect moments to take a shot, and they're just waiting, and that box fills up with opponents then, and it's...
They said about the Spain game last night, the skipper, 2 or 3 times, France were getting on top, so he purposely went into these sort of leaning tackles so he'd get a foul. Rolled about for about 5 minutes, and when you looked at the rerun, nobody had actually touched him as such. But he was obviously, and Alan Shearer said, this is good tactics. He's breaking the rhythm of the game up to prevent the French getting into a rhythm and that. And you're right, it's part of the game, but it wasn't when I played. It just wasn't.
It's like, but it's the same thing as late in the game. If you're winning, again, against Slovakia, I think it was Palmer had the ball, and I'm just going run to the corner flag, and then he didn't. He came inside, and so if you're winning, you want them to take up the corner and waste the time. But if you're losing, it drives you mad.
Yeah.
It's
and I think I've noticed that Walker seems to be a pace or so too slower than he normally is. A load of the wingers are actually beating him on a run for the ball. That would have never have happened before. And it seems to be that he isn't as fast as he was. Well, obviously he's older.
Well,
He's lost a bit of a pace that was crucial to his game.
Yeah, it's well, I mean, or you, because of course you don't know, is he carrying a bit of an injury? Because the thing is, are they going to say, they're not going to, if they don't admit it, then then they'll play. And is he carrying a bit of an injury? Is he not 100%? You just never quite know, do you? And it's unless you're physically, it's that bad that you literally can't play. Then if you can hide it and get away with it, or have an injection or whatever, then that's what they do, isn't it? But
there was a funny bit at the end of the Spain game. It was the photographer slipped into the skipper. What's his name? Maratta.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, but they were there cheering with all the supporters and all this. His photographer come sliding in and just double tackled him or something, and he limped off half injured. So if he's out of the final, it's the photographer's fault. Anyway,
Yeah, well, so continuing the theme from last year, it seems a bit. Obviously, the elections come and gone. We all know how that turned out and everything now, but doesn't mean that we can't still discuss what we think should be done if we got into power. So, something else that's cropped up, which I've heard debated and talked about before over the years, but never really paid much attention to it, which is probably a bad thing. But and that is the arguments for and against the first past the post voting system and proportional representation. And doing a lot of reading and listening to people over the last few days, the common consensus is that this election really highlights more than ever why the first past the post system is very dodgy when it comes to how the votes are actually represented in Parliament. So just to put it into context, so I've got the numbers here, just how the five parties that got the most votes shaped up. So basically the number of votes versus how many seats this got them in Parliament. So in percentage, Labour got 34% share of the vote, and that translates into a 63% share of the seats in Parliament. Conservatives got 24% of the vote, and that translates into 19% of the seats. Reform got 14% of the vote, and that translates into 1% of the seats. Lib Dems, 12% of the vote, and 11% of the seats. Greens, 7% vote share and 1% of the seats. So I think the most glaringly obvious one is the fact that the Lib Dems got less, got 12% as opposed to Reform's 14%, but yet ended up with 11% against Reform's 1% share. So essentially what it's saying is that you can get more votes, but less representation.
Less representation. I suppose that's depending where. I mean, if you're in an urban community with, hundreds of thousands of folks, or if in a rural community, it depends where your seat is, really, doesn't it?
And I guess, I don't know how they work it out, but obviously there's different. It's not like you've got exactly the same number of constituents in each constituency, and then obviously what was the turnout? I think the turnout was very low, barely above. I'm not sure if it even
about 40 something. Was it 40 something?
I thought it was that low, but
it
barely got past 50% if it did. So of course, that all has to be factored in. But either way, it's surely, it's got to be questioned if you've got if you get less votes but get more MPs in, as opposed to a straight slice up of but out of all the votes, as they do in a referendum, what percentage, who got what percentage of the votes. So this is so you get that percentage share in when it comes to MPs. But it's
But how would that system? Say you get 30% of the votes and then 12% and all that, and you don't contest the seats. You just vote on I don't know, like a national level, and then they start allocating where they want their MPs. It wouldn't work properly, would it? You've got to have a local MP fighting for a local constituency, I would have thought.
Yeah, I guess they could still look at which what the most votes were for an individual MP or party in a constituency, and then put that MP for that constituency. But it would just be, it would be difficult. There'd be things to be ironed out about it, but there's got to be a closer way to get the country's what the country have voted for more closely represented by the number of actual representatives in Parliament, because it is. Yeah, like I say, it's the first time I've ever looked at it closely, and the numbers here. Just in that example, you just think, well, it just.
Well, I suppose the Liberals have had a good return then, haven't they? They've got 11% and what, 70 odd seats.
And again, I'd like to understand more about how and why that was. I mean, was it because you hear all this talk about safe seats and you think, well, it just seems bizarre to me how they can be that. But I mean, the figures back it up. But the fact that people have voted the same people, literally just election after election, decade after decade, and so it's assumed that party or person will always win in that area. So it is a very almost a science on its own,
Yeah. I mean, I don't get involved in politics, but these blokes who just know it inside out. Chris, somebody who does the BBC one, I mean, it's just fascinating to listen to because he's so into it. That he sort of speaks in layman's terms, so you can understand what he's talking about, really. I find it interesting when the power of balance changes, because I always think it's much easier to be the opposition, because they set themselves up now, the Labour, to be knocked down, and in a way, the Conservatives now say, look, you've shouted us down for the last 14 years, we're going to have our go now. And in some respects, it's a bit easier, isn't it? Because you counter all the arguments with saying, oh, well, you said you'd do this and you ain't done this. Not saying it's right or wrong.
Oh, no, but it's easier to criticise and
of course it is
when you're not being put to the test. It's like with football, isn't it? You can. It's easy to say what you would do when you're not actually doing it and it's being put to the test. You'll never know whether it'll work or not because you never did it.
And of course now they've got to have all the going round the reeking when they're asked questions that they don't answer. I mean, that was fascinating. I was telling Tim today, there was the Judy and Richard. Did you see when he cancelled the bloke that he was going to be interviewed because he wouldn't answer the question?
No.
It was on. I forgot what it was on, but he was doing Good Morning Britain, and they'd got this guy, and he was at West Midlands Safari Park. Don't know who he was, not sure which the party was, and this Richard guy said, "Right, thanks for coming, blah blah blah, and what is your answer to this question?" And of course, they all go off on it, don't they? They all go round the reeking, and he went, "Stop," to this chap, and he went, "I asked you what your answer is to this question. And you've not answered me. Can you answer me?" And he went again. And this Richard Rose, "Can I just stop you there? I'll give you one more chance. I'm going to ask you this question, and I want you to answer the question. Not talk about something else, not go all around the reeking. I want you to answer this question." Anyway, the bloke didn't. So this Richard guy said, "I'm really sorry, but we're terminating the interview. If you don't want to answer the question, there's no point me wasting airtime." Just clicked him off. And the girl that was on the couch with him, was going, as if to say, what are you doing, Richard? And he went, "Look, I asked him a question. He didn't answer it. What's the point wasting airtime?" And so many people were phoning in saying, good on you, good on you.
I can imagine a lot more interviews that would be a lot shorter.
Oh,
if that was
God,
the
yeah.
attitude taken.
Yeah. But they're conditioned to, regardless of what you're going to ask me, this is what I'm going to talk about.
But that's got to be, like I said, I've said this, I can't remember if I said it last time now, but really, in all honesty, the politicians are the faces and the voices. That they're the ones that go out there and do the talking and this, that, and the other. But behind the scenes, it's the advisors that they even call themselves spin doctors, and they, and like you say, they must just be trained the same way as anyone's trained to do a job. But they're trained, right? If you ask this question, just say this. Even if it's, so it must be. I couldn't do it because I'd feel so like a puppet, or it's like if someone's asked me a question, I want to tell them what I think. Otherwise, what's the point of me sitting here? It's just so, yeah. And I think more people, and I think that's one of the chief problems. People never really find out anything because, I mean, even through all the stuff we've heard in recent weeks with the campaign, at the one time where people just want honesty. You just hear so much round the reeking and nonsense that people just switch off to it, and that's why people, I know obviously there'd be other reasons, but that's one of the reasons people don't turn up to vote, because I think, well, I've had no answers, I've had no, so it's.
I think there's definitely an apathy this time, right across the country, as if to say, well, it don't really matter.
Well,
we'll have a change, but it doesn't really matter because nothing's going to change.
But every election that goes by, that's that. These things aren't going away. And that's why I do think now it's become so glaringly obvious, like I say, you only have to look at these numbers to see that. Well, hang on a minute, how many votes are wasted because ultimately it's stacked in favour of the so-called bigger parties, and so it's an interesting thing. But moving on to we ran out of time last time when we were talking about education and university and basically just making the degree system better, more worthwhile, not so expensive, doing degrees in a shorter period of time rather than, does it really need to take 3 years and so on, and then what's at the end of it. But what I wanted to, the money that could be saved then from, not just people not just going to university and doing degrees that don't lead anywhere, or if it took less time, would be the money that was saved on student loans. Because something that drives me mad that never really gets said is about the student debt, because if you don't, until you earn a job that pays, I think the threshold's now 27,000 a year, you don't pay it back anyway. So when I've sat there answering the phones for a bank with earning £20,000 a year with people who've got degrees, they're nowhere near paying any of that back. So there's so much of it that, yes, on paper it's debt, but it never gets paid back. So that money could then be used to help get employers to hire apprentices, all this stuff they keep talking about. And from a personal note, for helping encouraging employers to employ disabled people or people with health conditions, they could invest, say to the employer, okay, we'll pay the person's wages for 6 months or 12 months, so they get a chance to show you what they can do rather than being judged, on all the other things that they get judged on. And at the end of it, you tell us if they, if you want to keep them on, then you take over paying them, or, if not, then give us your reasons why you don't. And that way the person's had a chance. They've, had a good time to showcase their skills and what they can do. It's cost the employer nothing apart from, their time. So, it would just open up more opportunities, I think.
Is there a length of time that you have to, if you're not earning the right amount of money to pay back your student loan, does it time out?
I don't know, to be honest, Shona.
I think it's just indefinite. Like, obviously, you might go 20 years of your working life and then suddenly get a job that meets the threshold. But as far as I understand it, until you have, and then even when you meet the threshold, it's only like I've done loan applications for people and they say, oh, yes, I'm paying my student loan, and it's like £5 a month or something. So, it's going to...
I've got to admit that when I had the pay slip, one of my pay slips, and it said student loan repayment, I got really excited.
Really?
I thought, finally, 15 years. And I've managed to pay...
My daughter's
£1.50 a week.
best friend is a barrister, and she's probably in her 40s now, and she's still paying the fees back. But it's like you say, it may be that she could have cleared it, but it might be that she said, well, I'll pay you £10 a month, knowing that it's going to go on for like 30-odd years or 40-odd years. Because I think once you offer something, it's a bit like if you get in debt. Once you offer them something, they can't do anything about it.
Or if you've been fined or something, I'll pay you £1 a month, I can't afford it.
Legally, they cannot refuse it. If you offer them say you owe them £10,000 and you say, well, I'll pay you 50p a month, they've got to accept it because you've offered them something. That's all I can afford. That's it.
I think the amount, though, like you were saying, Simon, that you pay back is so little that then, although the interest is really small, I don't think you'll ever actually pay it off if you're only paying about £5 a month.
Oh, but the point is, if you never get a job that reaches the threshold,
you haven't got to pay it.
Then you're not going to pay anything, and all that money has been spent on you still. It's all money that's come out of the government. Out the however you want to put it, taxpayers' pocket, government's. But the point is, it could have been. There's so much more that could have been done with it. If rather than keep taking money out, I'll spend more money. Well, no, let's use the money that's already being spent better, basically. And
but you are right. I mean, when I was when we used to do the BAs and MAs at Aston, and they took 3 years or MA 2 years or 3 years, all they got to do is have more seminars a week rather than have like 3 days of reading at home and have 3 seminars a week. If you had a seminar every day and every afternoon, and you'd get it done in a year, 18 months, without a doubt.
Well, I've never met anybody that was doing a degree that had to actually physically go in more than 2 or 3 times a week. And even then, not all day, not like going to school or
No, you
college.
only do. You might have one seminar a day, and that's it, and the rest free time for you to work and discipline yourself. But you ain't telling me that you need to have, you need to be in be in a classroom for an hour, and then you got 7 hours to do your work for the day. Don't work it.
But then, of course, nowadays, as I understand it, a lot of it's been done online. So if
I would imagine so.
I don't quite know how it works if you're actually living on the campus or whatever. But if you are, for people who study from home, it's even less time now. Your travel time and all your rest of it. So, but just to finish on the education front, it kind of links back to I discussed about the NHS on the last episode. But another thing I would advocate is, we keep being told again that people come here to study medicine and everything, but then we lose them to elsewhere. But so I would do something along the lines of, if people do their studies here and then give 5 years of service to, the NHS or the UK, whatever it wants to be, then they would only have to pay back 50% of their student loans, for argument's sake. Or if they did 10 years, then they wouldn't have to pay anything back. Something along those lines, just basically incentives them to, yes, we've funded it, but we've got a good length of service out of them in return.
Yeah. Sounds interesting, doesn't it? Because a lot of them do immediately. I think Aston used to have a lot of Italian, for some reason, a lot of Italian students. Some are to be Chinese and Russian, but they'd only come just to learn English because it was cheaper to do it over here than be schooled over there, and then they'd just straight back home, wherever they did. And also, you get more for a foreign student than an English student.
Yeah.
So their government's paid. Now in Scotland, I'm sure the governments pay for the kids' education, don't they?
Yeah.
But we don't in England. The kids have to pay themselves.
What about the NHS ones though? So aren't they paid for if you're doing a medical
I'm not sure.
degree?
It keeps varying, doesn't it? Like at one point, the nurses were upset because their bursaries you didn't get a bursary for doing it. But then I know someone that studied to be a nurse. It must be about 10 years ago, and they did get a bursary. So. But this is what I'm saying, all these cuts, things that get made, there'd be more money in the pot from, prioritising those sorts of studies and degrees and students. It may sound a bit harsh, but, there has to be some sort of system or way of prioritising things. And, like I say, but then only if they then invest and give a certain amount of service to us afterwards that they get the benefit from it, as it were. So
what about streamlining degrees? Because you have a boatload of degrees, probably 50% that nobody's ever going to use in a job to find a job. The topic is really irrelevant to the real world. So again, I presume, mind you, then you'd put teachers out of business, lecturers out of business, and stuff. So it's counterproductive. But you do have loads of kids that spend 3 years, 5 years of their lives studying something they're never ever going to use when they come out. But that's the point, is it? But
in the end, that's cost thousands of pounds. It's cost them 3 years where they could have been out there, getting some work experience, doing whatever, figuring out, if they're not sure what they want to do, figuring out what they want to do, and then they can always go back and study later.
Yes.
And
do you think it's an expectation still for
what a kudos thing
for generations coming down now? If their family line have always gone to universities, that expectancy that they have to go there.
Yeah, well, it goes back to, we talked about this last time, didn't we? About the fact that people now almost feel they're doing something wrong, or
if they don't go,
if they're not going, or even if they say, well, look, I don't know what I want to study, I don't know what I want to do, all the right reasons, all valid reasons, but yet they're made to feel like, well, no, you've got to go whatever, just pick this, but if you don't want your study, just pick something, and that's...
But then are they going for the parents, or are they going for themselves?
Well,
that's another argument.
That's the question, isn't it? That's the...
It's like when you have somebody that's incredibly talented and whatever sport or whatever music they play, some are driven because it's the parents' ambition. I know when I played football, it was my dad's dream, but he never said to me, I want you to do this. And when I finished playing, it was like, well, it's your decision. blah, blah, blah. Never said he was disappointed. He just said, well, just go and find a job then. If that's you've changed your mind, that's not what you want to do. But with a lot of people, it is driven by a sort of urge for the parents to maybe do something they never went and did, really. But we were never said, oh, you've got to go to university. It was like, well, it's up to you. It's your decision, if whatever you want to do.
Well, that's it. And like I say, and the things in the day is, frankly, if more people are going, then why? It doesn't make it so special, does it? It's like anything. It's broad. Everyone does it, so you're not unusual. If anything, you're more unusual. If you want to stand out, don't go.
Well, you might go the other route, and you might go find a firm, go in an apprenticeship, work your way up, become the managing director, and Jimmy, who's had a degree, is still working in the office, really, because he hasn't got the same drive or worldly knowledge that you've got.
Well, I mean, something's always frustrated me. I mean, it hasn't actually sort of happened to me, but whenever people have said to me, "Oh, would you want to be a supervisor?" and I said, "Well, frankly, to be honest, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing being manager of a person or people if I hadn't done the job myself.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to just walk into an office, have been appointed a manager, but yet they know and I know I haven't. I don't know how it really works." Yeah. And so therefore I think there should be far more encouragement. Because people, you can go to university and study management, but then suddenly you're out of that and you've got to manage people.
Yeah.
It's so I think it should be okay. Learn from the bottom upwards. If you want to progress, because I think people respect you more then. If you're people will respect. I always respect managers more when I know they've been where I have. And so
it's about lived experiences, the same as everything, and it's really if you've lived an experience. I mean, the discussions I used to have with our dad, and he was a working class bloke, not particularly well educated, but he was really worldly wise, and everything that he said was measured, and he thought about it before he said it. Now you might get some person who hadn't had that experience, had got a totally different viewpoint, and was very naive, worldly, even though they were incredibly intelligent.
Do you think maybe as well there's an element of having to experience that as a a young adult, for the crack, going, meeting friends, potential partners or whatever goes on, building memories. It's expensive.
It is.
But, maybe it's that's an element of it as well.
Well, it's a great life, and they enjoy it. Most kids do enjoy it, so you can't knock it, but it does keep them in this bubble for a long, long time. And when they come out, a lot of them are really shocked that the real world ain't going to put something on a plate to them. Really, we've got about a minute left, Simon.
Oh, it flies.
Flies. We'll have to continue discussions in another one.
Or I need an upgrade to a 2-hour show. I think.
Yeah, 2-hour show. Yeah, we'll have to find 2 hours or something. Yeah.
Well, I'll let you know how my request for a 2-hour show goes, but in the meantime, we'll continue to fill the 1-hour slot with hopefully lots of entertaining information and discussion for you. And a reminder, if you want to join in with thoughts or suggestions of topics you'd like discussed, then email me simonhill_6@hotmail.com. Apologies that the talk about the football will be a bit out of date by the time this goes out, but that's the one issue with recording and not doing it live, that when you're talking about current events, it can sometimes fall out of sync with what's actually happened, and things have moved on since the episode was recorded. But hopefully England will get the job done, and we'll certainly discuss whatever the outcome is on the next episode. And in the meantime, whatever you're doing, take care, and we'll see you next time.